Begin.
We did. We began. We're beginning. This is the beginning.
We said hello.
This is the beginning.
But I feel like maybe the listeners are so in need of instruction, just like everyone needs an intro song and names. Maybe they also need to know when to start paying attention.
Ready, set, now. Start paying attention.
Begin.
You probably have, if we're being realistic, you probably have like 5 or 6 minutes before you need to start paying attention.
Yeah. There's a lot of. I heard the term from Hollywood Handbook, front porching. There's a lot of front porching going on before the meat and potatoes.
That feels racial to me.
Yeah.
That's you. That's you bringing something to the table. I think
that's you right there, son.
Yeah,
that's you bringing that into.
I don't know. I'd be curious to know the origins of that term.
All right.
But yeah, welcome to the Spinecrackers podcast, listeners. Yep.
What?
Sorry, I said it originated in Oakland. Probably. I shouldn't have said that.
I don't even get it.
Off to a bad start.
Yeah, off to a bad start. Re-begin. I'm glad I told people not to pay attention for 5 minutes.
Yeah, that was a trick.
Yeah.
Now begin.
So, yeah, now begin paying attention. This is the Spinecrackers podcast, where we take a book every episode and of one of our choosing. And
we choose the books for the podcast. No one else does.
And, hey, some people have, like, listener choices and whatever, and if we had listeners, maybe we would do that, but
it's a possible thing.
If you're listening, you want us to read a book, let us know. But no promises, obviously. But anyway, yeah,
we won't read it.
We read a friggin' book and we talk about it for a long time.
Yeah, you know the spiel.
Follow our Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and subscribe to our YouTube channel, dude. We almost have 100 YouTube subscribers.
Oh shit.
That's crazy to me.
So let's get that into the 3 digits with this episode. If you're listening 2 minutes in, stop what you're doing, go subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's a lot of the podcast episodes, but we also do some unique videos that are only on YouTube, and we're going to be doing more of those soon. So.
And 50 of those subscribers are my own personal Google
sock
accounts.
puppet accounts.
Yeah. And only 15
we just
are
need
mine.
More.
Yeah, we got to boost the numbers. And they're also paid for just people that, like Fiverr people that we just pay to.
All of our Patreon money from our 3 patrons, shout out to our patrons on Patreon, goes to pay for YouTube's sock puppet subscribers.
Yes.
Listen, it's like when you choose when you're investing right online, and you can choose to have the earnings from the dividends be reinvested. It's
we're
a long strategy. On us. Is that a term?
Yeah, we are. That's true.
I'm an idiot. I have no idea what I'm talking about with that. But I'm Matthew.
I'm Gabriel.
I'm Paul.
Paul.
And today we will be talking about Correction by Thomas Bernhard.
Bernhard.
Yeah, I'm not going to do the German flourish. I don't know.
I'm going to turn my AC off. That sounds better with it off.
Sounds about the same to me.
Oh, it hasn't turned off fully yet. Nice and quiet.
Oh, that's
quieter.
That's
Oh, okay, way better. Okay.
It's undeniably quieter. I can't deny it.
It's not even that cold out.
It sounds
and just
good.
to address my own sound issues, I'm in an empty room, and that's why I've sounded so bad on the last few episodes. We moved, as some of you know. But I have a sock and a beanie over my mic right now, and I think it's helping a little bit, hopefully.
Right. And if you want to play a prior episode, maybe the last two, you can really do a nice sound comparison if you really want to know.
Yeah, someone let us know in the YouTube comments. Oh, I also just want to say I checked. I was able to check our Apple Podcast page today, even though I don't have iTunes, and we have 2 5-star reviews.
Holy shit!
So let's boost that up, motherfuckers.
Probably both.
We're
of
trying to
your
signal
moms.
boost right now. We got to beef up all the metrics and algo shit.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. My mom does not know how to use iTunes, that's for sure.
How many
it's not from
1-star
her.
reviews do we have?
0. We have 2 reviews and they're both 5 stars.
Okay. It'd be funny if it was like, and we have 40 1-star reviews.
Yeah.
It's all Cliff. It's all Cliff sock puppeting.
Yeah, and Cliff Sargent is sock puppeting us, dude.
Cliff Sark puppet. Bloodless fucking podcast.
So bloodless. Yeah, that's good. All right, yeah. So Matt, this book is your pick. He was Austrian, right? He wasn't like German.
Yeah, he was Austrian. I don't know if that's controversial to say either, but yeah.
Whatever. So, shout outs to all our German listeners. Sorry, I just mean they're different countries, and he wasn't born in Germany. That's all I mean. Like
no, he is.
no, he was actually born in Holland, wasn't he? But he grew up in Austria.
Oh boy, I did 0.
Okay, it's literally the first line on my edition on the about the author section. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He was, yes, in 1931. You're right. Grew up in Austria.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, this was my choice.
Why?
Again, not a very interesting rationale as to why it was chosen by me. I had read Concrete in college. I forget literally everything about it. And actually, it was a book we had read way back for the show that reminded me that I still wanted to read it and prioritized it. It was if you remember, it was Hervé Guibert.
Nice.
It was the friend who would not save my life or did not save my life.
To the friend who did not save my life. Yeah.
Who
good book, good episode. Go listen to it.
Guibert's his kind of joking sort of lapse into Bernhard's style was pretty funny, and I feel like I have a very similar. At least
he
after reading
references
this,
Bernhard by name, right? A couple times.
Yes, he's like an author. It's funny because he has a very Bernhard style relationship to Bernhard, and which is that he's like, I hate this man's writing style, and yet I'm obsessed. I need to keep reading, and he went on that little tangent where he writes in Bernhard style in that book.
Right.
Oh yeah, and I remember zoning that part out because I didn't like it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Huh, foreshadowing, Paul?
Yeah. Small preview. So it reminded me, that I wanted to check out some other work of his, and this is very boringly this is this is the one. This is the one.
This is considered his masterpiece, basically.
Oh,
right?
is it really? Okay, because I know that Cliff has read Loser,
which is I think his more famous book because people look at the title and they're like, must be cool, must be edgy.
Yeah, Loser.
Yeah, it's like that Beck
L7
song.
Weenie.
Yeah. Which I almost chose.
Yeah.
I almost chose Loser. But they're all, they're all books roughly about the same thing, I would say. Thematically, it's people obsessed with ideas, and Bernhard went to music school, and Loser's funny because it's two guys that go to school with Glenn Gould, the pianist.
Wait, have you read that? I thought you said you only read the other one.
I only read Concrete.
Okay, but you know a little bit about it.
But just the concept is funny to me.
Yeah, I read it actually looked funny. Yeah, the concept's funny.
Yeah, he's so good that one of them kills himself and the other is just obsessively
mediocre,
making fun of. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gould, but like because he can never achieve what he has.
That sounds about right.
So anyway, yeah, just basically interested.
So
That's it.
when did this book come out? 1980, early 80s, late 70s, 79.
Yeah.
79, and I don't know where this falls in terms of Bernhard's corpus. He died young, right? He had like lung issues his whole life. I think he had tuberculosis when he was young, and then he was diagnosed with some weird lung disease.
Yeah, he
He
died
was a
in
big jeweler.
Big jeweler. Dude, Bernhard
Yeah.
was jeweling fucking hard.
He was Julian Bernhard,
Really hard.
dude. Yeah, he was 1989. He died, so that puts him
58,
at
that's young.
58. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's young.
And I don't know what the disease is that he died of. I saw it, but I didn't know what it was. It's some weird like lung sarcoidosis, which I don't know what it is. He was diagnosed the year before this book was published in 78.
So this is the last one.
Let's see. That's
Is that
good
like a
question.
European disease?
No.
No, it sounds like you
No, this
smoked a
was-
lot of something and you get it.
It's actually weird. This was one of his first novels. He wrote most of his output between his diagnosis and when he died. This is his fourth novel,
Oh, that's actually super interesting.
which is interesting. Yeah. So Concrete was 82. The Loser was 83. Old Masters was 85. Extinction 86. Yeah. So.
That kind of like rolls it in with the Guibert book in a weird way again.
Yeah.
I wonder if that was something we didn't pick up on that was why he was interested in that writer.
Yeah, that's possible. So yeah, interesting figure, Bernhard, for sure. Super controversial in Austria.
Really?
Well, I mean, not particularly controversial, but he just like if this book is representative, like
Did not like it.
30% of the text of this book is about how Austria sucks shit.
Yeah.
And how it's just full of like idiot fucking, dum-dums who the only thing they're good at is committing suicide and
Or driving people to suicide with their like just disgusting ignorance.
right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's and he in his will, I read this, in his will, he wrote that he also wrote a lot of plays. He was a playwright. None of his works are to be published by an Austrian publisher and none of his plays are to be staged in Austria ever again.
Holy
Oh my
shit,
God.
dude.
Yeah.
He fucking hated that
So
place.
he just despised his home country, which I think is really interesting. And of course, that's something we'll be talking about.
So I
when we
assume he
talk about the
didn't
text
live in
of the book.
Austria then. After the point in his life, he like didn't live there.
No, I mean as far as I know, he lived in Austria most of his
he
life.
Was, he was there.
What a
He
freaking
died in Salzburg.
masochist.
He
What the
died.
hell?
He died in Austria for sure.
Yeah.
What a masochist fool.
Okay, I was just reading a little bit more. I guess that part of his will was annulled by his heir, but yeah, that was in the original will. Was that no publication of his currently unpublished works or staging of his plays was to be allowed in Austria.
Someone made a correction, I guess.
Someone made a correction. That's right. Yes, nice.
Yeah, so this guy, Austria does get roughhoused in this book.
But also
And,
just kind of humanity in general. It's very misanthropic, I would say,
Pessimistic.
overall.
Yeah.
Doomy gloomy.
Although, again, haven't read a ton of his other stuff, but like, at least when you take like this book in isolation, which I don't want to do, but it's what I have to do. It's like it seems to be a little bit making fun of, I would say, the main character or the main subject, Reutemer, the quote unquote genius.
Yeah, Give it a
natural
little. Give it
scientist.
the old college try, Matt. Let's at least go with Roy Dahmer.
Roy Dahmer?
Roy Dahmer.
I
Roy
just can't.
Tamer.
Roy Dahmer. Roy Dahmer. Just say Roy Dahmer.
Roy Timer.
I'm gonna call him Roy Thamer.
No, God, that sounds like a Shakespeare character.
How should I say it?
Roy Dahmer.
Okay.
That's Americanized enough.
Or you could,
Okay.
I was
it's
saying
still
Roy
wrong,
Tamer.
but it's better.
It might be
Roy
wrong.
Tamer.
I might just be totally wrong anyway, but I was reading it as Roy Dahmer.
Okay. What if I just looked it up right now?
You won't.
Dude, you fucking bet?
I bet you won't.
Dude, I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah, I wish you would. I wish you would.
So I can't turn my.
But anyway,
freaking
that's how I was always pronouncing it, and in my head anyway. But he's the main sort of figure and subject, but he's not the narrator. We have a weird, unnamed narrator who was one of Roy Dahmer's childhood friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so you're getting like this misanthropic viewpoint, very specifically, I'd say, by the latter half, and I think I have a hunch that is basically the tone of a lot of other Bernhard works, but at least as far as this book goes, I feel like it's making. It feels a little bit more like it's just poking fun at the character of Roy Dahmer. You know, like
I did not get that necessarily at all, but
No?
we can maybe get into it more.
well, I feel like there's a switch because it's like you have the like outside perspective, and then you have like in the first half, it's like the dude who has come to. After an illness and during his recovery to like sort through Roy Dahmer's works
Right.
and whatever, and then you have like the works themselves he's sifting through and kind of reading and annotating, and so I just feel like we can get into the details later, but like in the first half, Roy Dahmer is like this too good for this world, angelic, I would almost say, intellectual person who's so pure of heart and trying to do these things.
The narrator is a simp for Roy Dahmer.
100%.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And then when you read the shit that Roy Dahmer's saying, it becomes a little more crass and like Freudian and just kind of enmeshed in human messiness, and you end up seeing like he's kind of just like a bitter weirdo.
Yeah. So I think okay. So I guess just to talk about the plot, such as it is, a little bit, basically, right? Like, the book is split up, or who wants to do this? Paul, I want you to do this.
Why? It's not my pick.
I know, but okay, fine, it's not your pick. You're right.
It's not
That's
fair.
not traditional. But I just know you didn't like it, so I wanted to hear.
No, I didn't. No.
All right, Matt, talk us through like what the plot of the book is.
I'm getting Roy Dahmer from
Roy Dahmer?
Yeah, I'm gonna
That
say
can't be right.
Roy Dahmer. I'm just gonna say Roy Dahmer.
There you go.
So anyway, the run through of the book. Is the main character ever named at any point?
No, unnamed narrator.
Unnamed narrator.
He was a childhood friend of Roy Timer. Right?
Yeah.
We found out later.
Yes. Arrives at Höhler.
Holer, yeah, I just said Holer. Who's
Höhler?
basically the third character of significance in the book. Who it's three childhood friends.
Höhler was like putting Roy Dahmer up in a room, basically. A garret is what it's called, and I don't know exactly what a garret is, but
It's just like another word for an attic.
okay. So that Roy Dahmer could conduct studies or whatever. Roy Dahmer has killed himself, and in the wake of Roy Dahmer's death, the unnamed narrator is taking an opportunity that he arrived at through an unnamed illness that he's recovering from, to like undertake the process of I don't know, like writing and documenting the legacy of Roy Dahmer as a person.
Which Roy Dahmer specifically like left to him. Like Roy Dahmer left his friend, the narrator, all of his unfinished work, all of his papers. They're both academics, right? In some capacity. Roy
It seems that
Thalmer was a scientist who was working at Cambridge, and then the narrator, I think we're supposed to,
You don't get
was
much.
also, not, you don't get a ton, but I think he was also in a related field. I think we find out towards the end of the book, it's really only mentioned once, that Roy Thalmer was studying like gene mutations and stuff.
He was a
as
biologist,
his, biologist, his like academic work.
Yeah. You really don't get much in terms of like the perspective of the person who is essentially narrating everything. And,
Except that he loves Roy Thalmer.
Yes, he really does. So the book's split in two. The first part of the book is the narrator more or less describing like his feelings about what he's about to do. And describing like where he's found himself. He's staying with Höller in Höller's house in the Orach Valley, the Orach Gorge, and there's like this like waterfall going through it, and there's this constant rush of water, which is a place in Austria, I guess.
I tried to find it, and I couldn't. Like, there is, I think, an Orach River, but I couldn't find it. But, like, all the pictures I was able to find, it looks like a muddy, shitty little creek. And I couldn't find, like, anything about, like, a gorge or...
It could be a joke. You know?
Yeah. So, right. Which, in and of itself, kind of makes sense about, when you think about Bernhard's attitude towards Austria, that it's like this... he's kind of, like... overblowing this tiny little river into some huge mighty which may be a commentary on what he thinks the sort of general Austrian national ethos or mentality is. I have no idea. But I don't know if the Orach River as it's described in this book exists in reality. There is something called that, I think. But
yeah. So he's staying in the very room that Reutemer used to like get away to when he was feeling sick at Cambridge to create this structure for his sister. There's all this horrific and potentially falsified family or like overblown family shit that's also going on that I thought was funny. But yeah, so the narrator is just sort of describing like his own feelings about it and his subjective state and all this. And then there's him tackling the material left, specifically a document that Reutemer left and brutally edited from 800 pages to like 200 to 20.
yeah.
And
if
then there's
if only he did that. If only Bernhard did that with this book. Am I right?
We'll get to your criticisms. So then it's like the last half is like just basically it's kind of from Reutemer's perspective in the scraps of this giant document that he left behind with like there's this refrain that says "so Reutemer" in like after a sentence to indicate like "so said Reutemer," and then there's like these ludicrous change where it's like if Reutemer is referencing his father or a friend, it's like so blah blah blah, so blah blah blah, and then it's all perceived through the narrator, who occasionally pipes up and says also what he's thinking about it.
Well,
And it just kind of
it'll
ends
say
there.
so Reutemer and underline, right?
Yeah, so you get some of it's not even commentary, but it's just noting when Roy Thalmer has
Emphases.
underlined something or crossed something out or whatever.
Yeah, so you're essentially just getting like a second and occasionally third-hand interpretation of some scraps of text left by Reutemer posthumously. And that's the end.
And, you gradually, throughout the second half, start to find out more about sort of Roy Thalmer's childhood, growing up in a, wealthy family on a sort of old school, like, estate / like castle called Altensam.
Yeah.
Where his family had sort of, traditionally lived, and they have farming interests and mining interests and blah 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 blah, and his kind of various fights and feelings about his father and his mother and his sister and his two brothers, because of course his sister is the fourth probably important character in the book, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Who, aside from the narrator, Reutheimer himself, Holler, and then his sister, because Reutheimer's sort of obsession that comes through in the second half of the book is the building of what he calls the cone, which is this sort of ideal architectural structure that he wants to build for his sister to live in forever, right? Basically.
Right.
And he wants to build it in the exact sort of mathematical center of this forest, the Kabernauser forest.
Yep.
And he does, actually. This all happens before the story begins, right? Because Reutheimer's dead. But he does wind up building it, and she does wind up living there, but dies like basically instantly because she hates it so much. Her death is what precipitates Reutheimer's own suicide, which precipitates the narrator becoming the sort of executor or the inheritor of Reutheimer's papers.
And what I like, this emerges like very slowly, because the entire novel is an unbroken, almost 200 or 300 page block of text.
Yeah, I don't know how we haven't.
Well,
said this, and it's like 45 minutes in.
The only break is it's 25 minutes. Slow your roll, Paul.
Okay.
Yeah, we're doing
All right.
good actually.
The only break is the half of the book between the first half, which is Holler's Garret, and the second half, which is called Sifting and Sorting.
Yes. So you at first you don't really know like what's become of the structure or both are dead, and it's just I thought it was funny, like you can just assume she like fucking hated it, but like the way that Reutheimer like talks about it in the second half, he's just like it was actually 100% perfect for her, and I knew she would be in a perfect state of bliss when she entered the structure. And ultimately that is of course deadly, so it makes sense that she would have died.
Yes.
Because she was so happy with the place, she died of joy. Like him just describing that, and like that's towards the end when you start to like realize that this man, who I think in the first half is painted more saintly, is
or at least as a respectable if eccentric visionary.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like that's the emphasis in the first half. This visionary, this man of very like crystalline genius, just trying in a disgusting world to realize a vision of purity.
I actually think that
to make a cone for his sister.
A cone.
I actually think that this book is Bernhard talking about David Foster Wallace writing Infinite Jest.
I would say it's more like the Pale King or whatever.
Yeah,
but
whatever
that didn't get
line,
finished,
yeah.
so maybe I don't know
Right,
how
the
it
cone
works.
was finished, and it's perfect.
Yeah, you're right, and it's perfect. That's mean, Gabe.
Too soon? Too soon?
No, it's 2008, whatever.
But I do think Paul's probably right. We should probably talk about the writing a little more in detail before we go deeper.
And
Yeah,
this was
I
made
just feel
fun
like
of.
For most people picking up this book, that'll be the most prominent thing about it. So
The most off-putting thing, probably too.
Off-putting for sure.
Okay, so what do you think, Paul? What was your experience?
I mean,
with
I
the
absolutely
writing?
hated the writing style for sure.
How would you describe it? What would you say about it?
I would say it kind of reminded me of like an in-depth analysis of one's own thoughts in the way that the mezzanine was, but from a much different angle, more anxious angle, more repetitive than Baker was, and a lot less characterization, even though there was barely any characterization in the mezzanine also. But it's like the darker side of an anxious brain, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think Baker's writing, I think, is much more academic in a way, in that it's very detail oriented, very like moment to moment. There's footnotes and there's this and there's that, and obviously this is much more kind of
relentless.
Yes, it's I actually felt reading it that Bernhard's musical background really came through for me in reading the book because it's so rhythmic and there's so much, like you said, Paul, so much repetition and so much kind of like phraseology that recurs and themes not themes in a literary sense, but themes in a musical sense that almost sort of like come back over and over again, particularly arguably in the second half, but I think in the first half too. But in the second half, I think is where it really sort of starts to come through like really heavily. But it's much more, I don't know. Like I would say that's one of the differences between like Baker and Bernhard is that Baker's writing is a little more academic, a little more kind of matter of fact, and Bernhard's writing is very musical. It's very visceral.
See, I have the exact opposite opinion about how a book can be musical or not. Like, I remember reading an article by Paul. We read his book. I like him a lot. Paul something. Auster. And he talked about how he likes books that feel, and he tries to write in a musical way. And I mean, I see what you're saying, Gabe, but to me, it's more like Baker did like a 1-to-1 to how beats fit into music and how words can fit into a book in the same way a beat can fit or a note can fit into a musical performance or whatever. To me, it's just like it was anti-rhythm. It was like bad jazz. Reading this felt like bad jazz.
I don't know.
It was just really difficult to read. And
okay, so that's another thing that I want to talk about is this concept of difficulty because. So I do think on your last point, I guess, before we move on, or maybe Matt, if you have something you want to say about the writing style and what we've been talking about, but I definitely felt like I was getting into I wasn't quite bobbing my head, but I was pretty fucking close at points through this book where it's like, so Reutheimer and da 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 and da 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 and so Reutheimer and da 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 and da 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 and so Reutheimer. Like I really felt the propulsive, rhythmic, like musical quality of the way that he was writing. It didn't feel random to me in that way. Like I get what you're saying in the sense that I think there's one you could sort of talk about jazz or even like. Jazz is obviously rhythmic, but even like kind of like free jazz, like really weird atonal stuff. This didn't strike me that way. I did feel like there was a rhythm here. I don't know.
Weird. And we also we did read another pretty importantly music-influenced novel, Bass Cathedral, which is like overtly about jazz. And that's also a novel that I would never regard as similar to this. You know what I mean?
That might have been, yeah. Yeah, it's
a more difficult one.
Yeah, maybe. That book was that book took me hard. That was a very difficult book to read.
Yeah.
I loved it. You can go listen to the episode, but that might have been harder to read than this one. That's close.
But the
and
repetition...
for the listeners, I did read this book today. Basically the whole thing. So it does influence
which though I think arguably is. I was listening to another podcast about Thomas Bernhard today, an interview with someone. And the guy said, "It is best like it was an author. I forget his name off the top of my head, but he's a big Bernhard guy apparently, and he said it's best to read all of his texts in one sitting if possible, because I do think they invite that sort of reading. There's not a lot of like easy places to stop. We were talking about this a little bit before we started recording, Paul." Like there are sentences and there are periods and stuff like that, but they're kind of few and far between, and it just keeps going. Like,
Like I said, my opinion is weirdly similar to Hervé Guibert's, where I'm like, yo, fuck this way of writing. Like, fuck this. Like, what do you think you're doing? You just keep saying the same shit, you idiot. But then I'm also like, I'm just enough, like you said, kind of caught up in it and the flow of it and the the downbeats of like the repeated phrasing that I gotta say, like I found it pleasant for some, like despite my negative initial reactions, I guess. Like I feel like I was so close to disliking it, but I wasn't, and I enjoyed that experience.
Yeah,
Personally.
I definitely, it rides that line, it really does, because I think that like if you just read like a couple, like I think this is I guess one of the weird things about reading this book for me is like if I was just going to sit down and read like, and I read this book very differently than Paul. I read probably like 80 pages in one go, took a couple days off, and then found some time the next couple days and read 10 pages, 20 pages, 30 pages. And then I read the last, the last 80 all at once or whatever. And so I had these chunks. And those smaller chunks, I thought, like, this is just great. Like, this is, there is pleasure to this. But when you read those bigger chunks all at once, and Paul, sounds like you basically read like 250 pages of it in a day.
Yeah, I got up at 7 o'clock this morning.
First of all, let's just take a moment to fucking shout out Paul for the dedication to crushing
I
this
read them all.
shit. I know, dude.
I read them all.
Just fucking making it happen. So shout out to Paul. But I would say reading those longer chunks, and again, the book never invites you to stop, except at one time. And reading those longer chunks, I would say the feeling that characterized my experience of those longer reading sessions was exhaustion more than anything else. Like I could find that rhythm and I could find that enjoyment, but it's a fucking grind. Like it just is.
Yeah.
Can I read this Goodreads review? Like it's a snippet of one by shout outs to Philip Lane, because this was hilarious and is real. He wrote a lot before this, but he just wrote in the middle of it. The whole book is made up of solid text, split only by the odd full stop and break for part 2. Why make fiction so difficult to access? Why don't we publish handwritten manuscripts, which would be even more difficult to interpret? Why translate even from the German? Why bother writing in the first place?
That's funny.
Which I don't totally agree with, but I thought that was, and he gave it 3 out of 5 stars. He didn't hate it, but I just thought it was like an extreme point.
He is also somewhat echoing the sentiments, right, of the book a little bit though too. Yeah. Like why write? Why publish? The other thing that I think is looming over this that requires more expertise than I have is the fact that Bernhard was obsessed with Ludwig Wittgenstein, and that Reutheimer is loosely supposed to be akin to Wittgenstein. I mean,
I think that's all. That's all. Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, Bernhard wrote a book. Wittgenstein's Austrian, right? And there's also a book that he wrote just called Wittgenstein's Nephew. Mm-hmm. Bernhard was a little bit obsessed with Wittgenstein, and you can see that here.
Which is why, because and you elucidated basically everything about, like, in terms of expertise that you need to know about Wittgenstein. He was Austrian. He also studied in Cambridge, like Reutheimer.
Oh, okay, interesting.
And Wittgenstein sort of he didn't kill himself. I don't think. Did Wittgenstein kill himself? No.
No,
he died, but he also died very young.
Yeah.
If I'm remembering correctly. But Wittgenstein sort of was very interested, particularly in his early philosophical work, the Tractatus, in sort of crafting some sort of ideal product, right? He thought at the end of the Tractatus, which I think he wrote in prison, if I'm not mistaken, that he had solved philosophy, that philosophy was over. I've solved all of the problems, and anything that is not like explicitly solved here. Okay, he didn't write it in prison. He wrote it while he was on military leave from World War One.
Okay.
But he sort of thought that this was the end of philosophy. Similarly to the way that Reuthamer, and Wittgenstein was not a trained philosopher at the time. He was sort of like a savant, as it were. He, I mean, I guess maybe he was a trained philosopher. I forget. I don't remember. I don't know enough about.
That was a mathematician.
Yeah, it might have been right. But I should know more because I studied philosophy. I'm clearly not a Wittgenstein scholar. But
wow, dude.
I know. But he sort of, thought everyone else has everything wrong. I don't need to talk to anybody else about this. I've got this, right? And that's sort of Reuthamer's attitude as well, right? Like he talks and writes a lot about how, all of the architects, all of the builders, all of the like geographers are telling me this cone cannot be built, but I'm gonna fucking do it anyway, and they're stupid and they don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
He hates every credentialed and professional person.
Yes.
Basically.
Right,
Like they're like
exactly.
disgusting. And he just loves like the people that he hires to work and manual laborers and stuff. But like, yeah. An expert is anathema to Reuthamer.
Exactly. And so I think that it's a pretty and it's not quite one-to-one, but it's pretty, in terms of Wittgenstein and Reuthamer, it's pretty obvious that they're supposed to be analogs.
The only thing I know is very specifically the last phrase of the Tractatus, right? Seems to be basically the like theme of the book to me, right? Whereof one cannot speak, thereof one must remain silent.
Right.
He takes it to an extreme degree of like ideas equal death in the face of practical reality or something, but basically like the whole sequence about him editing his shit down until he just ends up like wanting to burn the manuscript because he just like got it all wrong. That seems, to be just sort of a nihilistic view of that final summary of the Tractatus specifically.
Yep.
But I also know that Wittgenstein like disowned his Tractatus as Juvenilia that he was trying to disprove later on. So, and I don't know if Bernhard was like privy to that or what the publishing shit was with Wittgenstein himself in that time period.
Well,
let me read this. This goes along with what you're just talking about, Matt.
Yeah.
Do it up.
I'm on the Kindle, so I don't know what page this is, but it's later in the book. He says, we're constantly correcting ourselves more rigorously because we recognize at every moment that we did it all wrong. Wrote it, thought it, made it all wrong, acted all wrong. How we acted all wrong, that everything to this point in time is a falsification. So we correct the falsification, and then we again correct the correction of this falsification, and we correct the result, the correction of the correction, and so forth. So Rothheimer. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, Wittgenstein, the Tractatus was the only book he ever actually published. What we have now as what's commonly called and published as philosophical investigations is like Reuthamer's papers, Wittgenstein's uncollected, unpublished notes on the Tractatus and related issues, which, you're right, Matt, sort of largely reject or contradict or correct what he originally already published in the Tractatus. But the Tractatus was his one book that was published under his name in his lifetime, and everything else we have now is his unpublished kind of papers and collections of thoughts, which is exactly what the narrator of this book is doing with respect to Reuthamer.
So would you say that Bernhard probably were the investigations available in Bernhard's time, and do you think he read them?
That's a great fucking question. Probably. I mean, I think the first, like, Wittgenstein died in like pretty early on, like in the 40s or something, or maybe the 50s. Let me look. 51. He died in 51. So, and then the first edition of Philosophical Investigations, which is the sort of posthumous correction to the Tractatus, was published in 53. So Bernhard almost certainly read it.
Yeah, he must have.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just because like Reutomer is also, again, this feels like very critical of Wittgenstein and the implications of his thought a bit, because like there's some anecdote about Wittgenstein not even wanting to say "see you tomorrow" to his friends because he couldn't prove that he would be able to. You know what I mean? Like that level of like obnoxious purity to some concept of purity, not allowing him to just be a normal person and be
the
like, "Yo,
philosopher."
Essentially, yeah. He's like, "Yo, I'll fucking see you tomorrow." He's like, "Well, I can't say that because technically I can't prove it." It's like,
do you have to do it in the Ben Shapiro voice?
I wasn't doing Ben Shapiro. I swear to God. I was trying to do Love on the Spectrum. He's Australian. But that's, by the second half of the book, that's what I basically concluded was the characterization of Reutomer, like his internal life was so that like I ended up questioning his criticisms of his family, who he fucking despised, specifically his mom. He's so rough on his mom, and I'm like, I'm willing to believe that the family life stuff was shitty, but I'm like, is this dude also just so incapable of seeing gestures of kindness or an attempt to connect, period, because of his dedication to quote unquote ideas in their like platonic, untouchable forms?
Yeah, I think that's right, and I definitely had that same experience about his sort of views on his family. I mean, I guess in terms of like, are these like specifically the veracity of them, right? Like, was his mom really this bad? Were his brothers really that stupid? Was his dad really that much of a kind of like distant, psychopath, basically?
As Paul read at the end, right? He disowns those writings and notions entirely, also, right?
Right.
So yeah.
But I guess the reason, and this gets back to your point earlier, Matt. One of the reasons is that I'm sort of skeptical of viewing the second half of the book as like a purely sort of satirical take on the like, aloof academic sort of character that Reutomer is that I know for a fact that Bernhard loved Wittgenstein and like greatly admired him and considered him to be like the best, like most important Austrian figure like ever, like and I so I sort of wonder, I think it's an interesting question, like how much of this sort of mix at the end of the book or in the second half is Bernhard's actual views versus trying to, poke at that figure. I just
including
don't know.
all the misogynistic views as well. Would that be included? Because I mean, that's a huge criticism by a lot of people that reviewed this book.
Yeah,
especially on Goodreads, which I skimmed through.
What's up, Goodreads?
But I mean, it's very prominent, the level of women hating, and women are beneath
right at the end,
beneath me and beneath men. It's disgusting and gross.
That they can't, they have no capacity or interest in intellectual pursuits.
But he contradicts himself. He contradicts himself because, and this is where I think at least there's some kind of attempt to, maybe he's trying to cheekily get in a sort of gender criticism that Bernhard secretly believes, but also like he's like, my sister's the only one who I can talk to about intellectual pursuits. She's the one of the few people that like meets me where I'm at, and like I love her, and she's like my better half, and we vibrate as one soul, blah blah blah. And then he he hates his mom. And she's like a dumb bitch, slob, poor, from a poor family.
Who basically like swindled his dad into marrying her.
Yeah, just because of her breeding capacity, and like she's you know, she's everything
Bernhard's
wrong.
words.
Yes, yeah.
Dumb bitch, slob, poor.
Yes, basically.
DBSP.
But then his sister is this angelic figure from whom he's like deriving all of this motivation to do this thing, and he kills her because of it. And it's like, I don't know. There's enough there to make me think that it's not as straightforward, but I do kind of have suspicions, you know.
I also think with the sister, and this doesn't necessarily disagree with anything that you said, Matt, but you know, there was a part of me, and I may have some stuff highlighted if I can find it, but where it came off that part of the reason Reutheimer started like doting on his sister and sort of, talking to his sister and trying to like take his sister under his wing or whatever, was because his mother also hated his sister. And
Right.
It was a sort of proxy way of just saying fuck you to his mother again by embracing his sister that much more fully. And I wonder how much of his love for his sister is not genuine love, but is like driven and sort of fueled by his hatred for his mother and the fact that he knows that his mother also hated his sister.
Yeah, like the family stuff is so important to me because like it is ultimately like very petty, and we were talking about Succession off mic, but I was just thinking about it too a little bit. Just like these people are fucking themselves over from ever being happy ever again because of like perceived slights, and it's just like it has nothing to do with this rarefied, beautiful world of concepts and ideas and intellectual purity. It's like he got pissed off and thinks one thing and someone else thinks another, and they're just fighting each other now forever.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like kind of like a juvenile projection on his part. Like, I think like what you were saying, like maybe there was some family drama, but it the way he wrote about the hatred was just like, I don't buy it. So I think I do agree with you there. It's just like his own intellectual qualms and the way he thinks about the world just caught him up in his personal life as well, and the way he thought about his family.
Yeah, like I don't really believe I believe that like his parents were ill-suited and it was like a weird situation at home and all this, and maybe like his parents and shit fought, but like you hear that, for instance, his brothers are like pieces of shit and they're always out to get him, but they never even appear, like his mom at least like appears in the book at some point and is like a character for a little bit. But
Yeah.
the brothers you never even see once. You're just supposed to believe that they're like malicious, vindictive people that are part of his mom's side of the war in the family. And that's it. And it's like, I don't know if I trust that analysis.
And there's also just not enough information, like for a book that is so freaking long and wordy, and like we're talking about scenes that are so few and far between, and they're so like underwritten, like what actually takes place, and that's something that bothered me too. It's like we don't have enough information to really gather a conclusive argument either way, and like what's the point of that?
Well, I think the the point is like a bit like Reutemer's not he's certainly not a reliable narrator, right? Like he kind of latches on to a conception of things, and then he just never lets go. And it seems like there's not much anyone else can do. And like in his mind, he's like, this is what it means to be my own person and like pure of thought, right? Like no one can convince me otherwise now about the state of affairs. I'm not going to try and empathize anymore. I'm not going to try and meet anyone halfway. Like, in the later half, there's a scene where he is coming back from Cambridge to Altensham, and he notices that the barn is painted green. And this is what kind of flipped me. My interpretation of that event was that his mother was trying to take an active interest in some aspect of the forestry and the like lands and stuff, and was trying to make an aesthetic decision, etc. If you just cut away all the bullshit of his description of the event, what he did was he wrote in so he could relax at Altensham after his hard time in Cambridge, and the second he enters the door, he goes, "Why is the barn green? It looks like shit," to his mom. And my interpretation was that his mom was like literally was trying to do just something.
And then was also like, you know what,
they
dude,
fought
fuck
immediately.
you.
Yeah, and she was like, "Fuck you. What the fuck do you mean? I'm trying to actually like just." And then he's like, "My mom would try and like say that she was reading a book I was reading, but I knew it was lies, and I knew she was a bitch actually." And I was like, "Dude, I think you're just autistically not interpreting this as the genuine gesture that it might be, despite the." The element of artificiality in it, the attempt by one person to do what you're incapable of doing.
That's a good point. I think that's, I mean, I would say the only, and I don't know if you guys talked about this while I was taking a pee-pee just now, but I would say that
I'm going to pee right now.
Something that militates against that a little bit, Matt, is...
Oh, let me hang out for a second. Hold on.
Is the fact that he was, like, legitimately abused as a child, and they locked him in a tower with, like, no food or water for days on end. And
true. I don't deny that the household was hellish.
A dark
and
place.
That his parents did not like each other. It was more just like he is a person who like makes the finality of his decisions to see things a certain way are what he prides himself in, but
right.
It's part of this overall concept I perceived where it's like notions and ideas are overtly equated with death in the book. And I just feel like that's part of it. It's not just like beauty and principle. It's like it can be very bad and inhuman.
Yeah.
Basically. All right, I'm going to pee now.
All right, bye, pee-pee. Paul, what did you think about Roy Thomas? Did you like him?
No.
Did you think he was the worst?
I thought he was the worst. Yeah. I thought he was just like an overbearing psychopath, intellectual narcissist. Very unlikable person.
Yeah.
You felt sorry for him?
No, I felt sorry for his sister, is what I was going to say.
Oh, yeah, me too. She's probably the only character in the whole book that I mean, she's barely written in there at all. You barely get any information, but...
Well, you really don't get anything, like, even when... that's one of the things that I found interesting about the book, is that, there's no dialogue, basically. It's Roy Thomas' descriptions of things and the narrator's descriptions of things. Like, even when the narrator is sitting around talking with Holler, you don't hear anything that Holler says. And obviously Holler's wife and daughters are completely written out, and they just sit around the dinner table silently, which is probably part of where
women don't matter.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is one of the things that I think is like kind of leads me to believe that this was maybe Bernhard's own view, because it's in the structure of the book. It's not just in Roy Thomas' writing or his attitudes, it's also in the way the book itself is written.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Matt is maybe banking or hoping that it's more of a satire and a joke, but yeah, I didn't really find it to be. I feel like it tends to be more of Bernhard's like real points of view.
We were specifically talking, Matt, about the fact that that there's no dialogue in the book, really. It's Roy Thomas' view and the narrator's view. And specifically the scene we were talking about was when the narrator is sitting around the dinner table with Holler and his family, and you don't get any dialogue from any of those other characters, including Holler, really, but specifically like the wife and the Holler's daughters don't speak at all and are completely silent the whole time, which makes me wonder if that sort of view, the sort of misogynistic view that Reuthamer is expecting in his papers, isn't baked into the structure of the book as well, which makes me think it might be Bernhard's also. And you can argue that was like the culture of the time, like women were meant to be seen and not heard and blah, 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 blah. And that's all probably true. But I mean, this was almost 1980, right?
Yeah, it was almost 1980.
Well, what's your question to me that he believed in this?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, or like, yeah, or is that separation as easy as we might want it to be?
No, I mean, my hunch, it's complicated, but my hunch is that at the very least, like, these are not, what's up, Paul?
I accidentally hit record, but I didn't mean to.
You're going to have your own podcast released earlier.
Ooh, is Paul trying to leave the spine crakers? Spine crakers? Drama.
It just feels more related to me, like with if he is a champion and super fan of Wittgenstein, then perhaps. But it seems more to be about verbalization and expression, and the idea that when you verbalize your ideas, they're immediately ruined, as like the difference between ideal and why we're enmeshed in horrific, interpersonal relationships or whatever. Like, so like the silent, children are to be seen, not heard, and the silent stoic wife who makes dinner and then goes and knits, while also being like the old school, right? Like shitty, conservative, and misogynist sort of view of like the family structure also dovetails in a little bit with the just sort of like the sort of philosophically sound idea of silence being the best move based on human cognition or something. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm not sure where he stands personally.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Paul.
I was just going to say, like, when Matt went away, you asked me what I thought of Reuthamer, and you mentioned that he felt bad for his sister. And I do too, because I was imagining, you have to imagine most of the relationship, obviously, but I was picturing his sister as kind of just like this docile but agreeable person that maybe just like nodded her head and agreed with a lot of the bullshit he was spewing at her. And he projected himself into this one woman in his life that was like, oh, she gets me. She doesn't like give me bullshit. I love my sister. I'm gonna build her a fucking cone. and my fucking mom doesn't like her. My mom hates her. It makes me love her even more.
I'm gonna make a cone. Yeah.
I'm coning.
I'm coning right now, dude.
I mean, one thing I want to say moving forward, like I like the whole story structure of everything that happened. It was just the writing style that threw me off, but everything that's going on in the book I found really intriguing. And the cone building in particular was hilarious and weird. Mm-hmm. And it kind of reminded me of kind of like the early century like Halloween-y books we were reading, like Great Godpan. This book kind of fell into that realm of, what was it? Strange fiction? What is that? Weird fiction. Weird. Yellow King, which I bought and haven't read yet.
Put it on the list, baby.
Yeah.
Maybe I will.
True Detective.
True Detective. Carcosa. Scars.
Carconza. Yeah.
Jesus.
Yep. I know. I don't have a lot to offer.
Okay, so not to be that guy, and we should probably read some passages from the book because I have a few that I really do want to read. But just on this question of oh yeah, you read a couple. But just on this question of Bernhard's views of Wittgenstein, I found a letter that he wrote to a doctor about Wittgenstein. And,
To a doctor?
Yeah, just like a guy he was talking to. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Uh,
So I have a rash, and also, what do you think about
it's
Wittgenstein?
Dr.
Yeah.
Spiel. I don't know who it is. But it's about Wittgenstein. And I'm just going to read the last paragraph. As for Wittgenstein, he combines the purity of Stifter, who I don't know, I think some famous Austrian, with the clarity of Kant, and is the greatest Austrian since and along with Stifter. Wittgenstein is now for us what we have not gotten from Novalis, the German. And one further sentence, W, Wittgenstein, is a question that cannot be answered. For this reason, he is at one with that level of merit that precludes answers and an answer. Our present-day culture is, in all its unbearable manifestations, a culture whose answer anybody thought it worth doing could easily figure out. Only in the case of Wittgenstein is it different. And the world is always the same excessively moronic, unconceiving world, which is why it is always without concepts. The concepts stand for themselves as concepts. This is lethal to the masses of heads, but no consideration should be shown to the masses of heads. So I'm not going to write about Wittgenstein because I cannot, or rather because I cannot answer him. All the implications of this are completely self-explanatory. Best regards and wishes, Thomas Bernhard. And my worry about that is that sounds like it is taken exactly straight from the second half of this book.
Yeah.
I'm a little dense. Like,
I'll drop the link in the chat if you want to peruse.
we should just put it at when you put it on YouTube. Drop the link too.
Yeah, I will.
Because Novalis is mentioned in the book. I don't know who that is. But are you saying like because Bernhard in that letter is like, yeah, because I'm assuming he's talking to a doctor because he's dying while he writes all these books. Like he's sick.
I don't know if it's to a doc. Like it could be a PhD. Like I have no idea. It's just.
Oh sure, yeah,
yeah,
doc, yeah.
yeah.
Where he's like, everyone's stupid, and I also don't know how to further the thoughts that Wittgenstein put forward. Is that basically what you're saying?
Well, and just the general attitude towards like everyone's an idiot. All these people suck. Like,
right.
And sort of again idolizing in sort of an analogous way to the way the narrative of this book idolizes Reuthamer. Wittgenstein. Again, it's one paragraph, but I don't know. I think it's the distance may be uncomfortably close for me.
I think, yeah, Bernhard definitely is an elitist and someone who probably feels himself like above where he's at. Like I have a little thing here. This is some anti-Austrian stuff. This country, once the very center of Europe, was, according to Reuthamer, no longer anything more than a rummage sale of intellectual and cultural history, an unsold remainder of government merchandise, on which the citizen is granted only a second or a third or a fourth, but in any case, only the last bid, only the leftovers. So, just like that, like, basically thought is done in Austria. Like, no.
And look, I'm all for critiquing like formerly Nazi, like German supporting countries for like their culture and whatever brought them to that point. But he takes it in a weird way. Like he takes it in kind of a weird direction. And he puts the emphasis on like everyone's dumb. Not everyone's they would supported the Nazis or whatever. You know what I mean? Do you know what I'm saying? Like I feel like if you had to ask me, like, okay, critique Austria. I don't know shit about Austria, but I know they supported Germany and the Nazis and all that stuff. That's where I would go. And, I think from what I understand, he does that in other books and whatever, but he focuses on this kind of weird cultural critique stuff, which I don't really know what to make of, frankly.
I don't totally get it either because, he lists a lot of composers and, like, Austria has a long history of intellectuals and like Mozart's Austrian, right? He was. Am I off base with that?
I don't know.
That sounds right to me, but I'm not actually sure. We should look it up.
But
It's
isn't that
just
the point,
odd
Paul?
to me. What?
Like that it's fallen off. Like it used to be, and now it's not.
You think that's his point?
Like that there were like geniuses coming out of this place, and now because it's like hostile to it, it's detestable, and we are going to look at all these people that managed to get out, even though like the country is hostile to them even existing at this point.
Even like regardless of the Nazi thing, like why is he not just saying how my country sucks because we love the Nazis, which is a big issue? It's still just like it's an odd kind of like teenage hatred towards a country.
Think Mozart was born in what would be present day Austria. Yes.
Okay. It's just like one of those things where you have like
where he died, where Bernhard died.
Yes.
You have like a long history of historical figures in your country, and you suddenly start denouncing your whole country without saying that we're bad because we like the Nazis. And you're right, Gabe. I can't put my finger exactly why it's just like worded weirdly, but his distaste for his own country is strange to me.
I see it in people who are like
Return to tradition.
not even return to tradition, but just sort of like I don't know. You can see it in criticisms of the U.S. and America as anti-intellectual. I've heard that term by people from every political quadrant. You know what I mean? Like
absolutely.
that. Like, so I don't really know what to make of that. But yeah, that like critical thought is smacked back down to earth every time you try and exercise it. All this kind of stuff.
Small correction, Matt, not to be a dick, but Bernhard died in a town called Gmunden.
No, that's good. Yeah, we need to know.
And the reason that he died there, it's actually relevant, is because it's like it's almost like, okay, never mind. I don't want to say too much, but you guys will get what I was about to say. It's like a summer resort with like different types of herbal baths and like healing like springs and stuff for people with like lung problems. And it's sort of like a resort / ancient kind of healing town with special waters and stuff. And of course, Bernhard had lung problems, and that's kind of what he ultimately died from. So he was, I assume, there trying to get better.
I also have a
Should have built
list
himself
of
a cone.
Yeah, please.
Should have went to the top of the cone to the meditation section.
Yes.
Well, you know those
Midsummer.
Midsummer, cone.
cone. Those what are they called? Humidifiers. They're often shaped like cones, and you probably could use one of those too.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean? Shoot a little mist at the top of the cone.
I could just imagine Thomas Bernhard like driving down the road when there's construction and there's like 1,000 cones, and he's just like, cone.
Oh, shit.
There they are.
There they are.
coning.
Hey, I'm
coning.
coning right now.
Here's a list of just random like other intellectuals and artists that I just, maybe someone who's listening can do something with this in terms of making connections better than I could. But I just underlined these. This is on page 45 of my, vintage classics, whatever, publication. But so for yeah, that's right. I got the same thing. What do you have, Paul?
Oh yeah, I got the Kindle.
Ooh.
Jeffrey Bezos.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I bought my physical copy from Amazon anyway.
I buy almost all my books from Amazon now. Fuck, so much easier. They come so quick.
They're there.
Just like me.
Shout outs to Amazon. We're sponsored by them, so.
Yeah.
Would that be good or bad?
Who the fuck knows? Listen, let me just rattle off these people.
Okay.
So, and these are all in relation to Roy Tomer and his thought, but this is on page 45 of the vintage. So we've got for composers, we have Purcell, Handel, Hauer, Webern, and Schoenberg. So go and explore that, and then he's describing basically like Roy Tomer's intellectual obsessions or the writers he was into that he constantly referenced: Montaigne, Novalis, Hegel, Schopenhauer, Ernst Bloch, and, because he thought that he recognized himself in them, the writings of Wittgenstein. So just thought I'd get that out there, just so if anyone more well-read than me wants to try and make those links, they can.
Austrian podcasts, hit us up.
Yeah.
They're probably all about Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Holy shit.
So any Schwarzenegger podcasts out there, hit us up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any podcasts out there, really?
Any
Just hit us up.
Hit us up, bro.
I do. Okay. I feel like we've done potentially enough litigating of Bernhard's personality and his own individual legacy. Although, of course, it's inseparable from the book, arguably. I kind of want to just read a passage that I found, because I think when we're talking about the writing, it's easy to think that it all is repetitive and crap and whatever. But I thought there were a number of passages that were just hit me, that were just I thought were beautiful and emotional and well done. And I kind of just want to get a little bit more, frankly, just want to read some more of the actual text. So
do it.
I'm going to do that now.
Okay, go.
So Matt, this is on 100 to 101 in our edition. And this is where the narrator is talking to Holler, trying to sort of engage with him about memories that they had as children with Reuthamer, and just sort of trying to breach the topic of Reuthamer's suicide when they were first sitting down to dinner and talking. I said, did he, Holler, also remember our way to school so well? Did he remember many thousands and hundreds of thousands of details, sensations, perceptions, feelings, intimations of feelings, those earliest important beginnings of thought on our way to school? For it was then that we began to think as we still think today, the kind of precise thinking which has since then become the mechanism of our adult intelligence. I could remember those thousands, hundreds of thousands of weather conditions on our walk to school, abrupt shifts in the weather. I felt them suddenly take place, transforming our way to school from 1 minute to the next, and thereby transforming us inside from 1 minute to the next. And the incessant changing of colors in the woods and in the auroch as it tumbled headlong from the woods down to the plain. Everything on our way to school had always been changes of color and of temperatures and of our moods. That muggy atmosphere in the summertime that sickened us on our way to school so that we came to be horribly sick later in school, or the cold in winter that we could cope with only by attacking it all along the way to school. We had to counterattack the cold, stomping, all bundled up and scared through the deepest snow, running through the Auroch Gorge where the snow was not quite so high, from one clump of ice to the next, and in school we felt as though we had lost our minds through the effort of making our way to the school so that we no longer had the strength to keep up with the lessons. Did he, Holler, remember the young teacher who always appeared in a black dress, buttoned high to the neck, whom we liked to listen to and whom we loved because she behaved considerately towards us? She was always considerate of us, and therefore of our conditions and circumstances, when, as a rule, people and especially teachers are never considerate. I never again had a teacher who was in the least considerate of me, I said, but this teacher was considerate in every way, took everything about us into consideration. All my life long, I never forgot this considerateness in the midst of so much ruthlessness at the mercy of which life, or anyway existence, all human existence, finds itself. Our way to school took its course just as our subsequent life did, I said, with all its passages through darkness back to light, with all its habits and unexpected coincidences. Our way through life, like our way to school, kept being subjected to abrupt changes of weather, kept following the course of a torrential river, always to be feared. For as we always lived in fear on our way to school, fear of falling into the raging Auroch, among others, so on our way through life, we always lived in extreme fear of falling into this river where we lived, always terrified of this river which is invisible, but always torrential and always deadly. I felt like that is both representative of the writing style with all the like repetition and the sort of same thematic kind of churn, but also just like beautiful. A guy talking to his friend about these memories that they have of their walks to school. Like it felt very human to me, which is not something that I think is, you know, apparent in some of the rest of the book, right? Where it's this very kind of detached, intellectual, kind of repetitive, almost chanting writing.
Well, that's why I think that the like narrator himself is the key a bit, because I don't think Reutemer is supposed to be, you know, the apotheosis of anything. He is intellect. He is cogitation purely, and the pitfalls of that as well. And I feel like the narrator is the person who is genuinely trying to bridge these worlds, you know. The dead, the person who can no longer speak about his experience, and like the questions of whether or not to even try to you know, he says he's not going to edit anything because
That editing is
going to
actually
be-
a crime.
yeah, basically.
But the
like,
narrator also he succumbs to the pitfall of the way Reutemer speaks and conducts his manuscripts too. Like, I underlined something that basically stated, it was in the first half of the book that, let me try to find it, but it basically states like he can't help but succumb to, oh yeah, here it is. Okay. I don't know what page it's on. I'm sorry. I have a Kindle.
all good.
Because a man who no longer thinks his own thoughts, but instead finds himself dominated by thoughts of another man whom he admires, or even if he doesn't admire him, but is only dominated by his thoughts compulsively, such a man is in constant danger of doing himself in by his continual thinking of another man's thoughts, in danger of deadening himself out of existence. My mic just fell off my table. Shit.
That feels in the spirit of what you were reading.
But yeah, that's like the narrator not wanting to do that disservice while fearing that he will.
It just shows his Hufflepuffian nature. No spoilers.
Whoa,
Whoa,
you gotta
dude,
chill,
huge
dude.
spoilers.
People wait hours for this.
I'm
content.
sorry, my mic fell off.
Legit.
I'm off the rails. My mic's off.
That's okay. That's okay.
But
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Matt.
No, you go. You finish up.
I was gonna say in terms of Gabe's passage, like I read this book today and I don't even remember that. And I think it because like I was succumbed by the relentlessness of the writing that I read the whole book today, but I was like, it lulls you to agony, this book.
And
And
I like that way of
can't
putting it.
It's just like I couldn't let go of how I felt reading it, and just like anything that came out of it that was good writing and end up being beautiful, it just like washed by me. But I do wonder if Guibert, read a passage like that from Bernhard, and that's what brought him back. Is like, oh, this writer who's just like rambling on and on actually has this beautiful prose writing within his text. So
it's
fascinated.
it's like addictive in a weird way to me, the writing. Like it's I get what you're saying, Paul, in the sense that like it's easy to miss those moments of beauty, but like to me when they show up, it's like so impactful and forceful, and it just hits that rhythm like so perfectly. So I don't know. Yeah, I definitely get what you're saying.
My question is like my limited knowledge of Wittgenstein, but like wasn't one of the other things this notion that that a private language is nonsensical and cannot be achieved.
Yep.
And I feel like that's like another one of those ideas that is trying to be communicated, where the narrator represents the solution to the private language that essentially Reutemer was having and creating within himself. that was making him toxify and essentially kill his sister. He kills himself. It's like, I just feel like that's the important part of that equation is the very what's the fucking hold on, let me read the shit, what's it called? Isn't there? Oh yeah, here it is. What's it called? The thing at the beginning, like the quote.
Forward.
Oh, epigram. Epigraph.
Epigraph.
It's
Epigraph?
epigraph or epigram. I always forget the difference between the two. There is one.
Yes. So, I mean, this is before even anything kicks off. It goes, a body needs at least 3 points of support, not in a straight line, to fix its position. So Reutemer had written. And, so I think, like...
It's epigraph.
Epigraph. So I think Hiller, Reutemer, and then the unnamed narrator constitute the totality of a genuine meaning as opposed to anyone individually.
They're the three legs upon which the meaning of the book stand.
Yes, in which you can triangulate a kind of meaning that might be useful as opposed to the completely sullied, subjective, and therefore somewhat useless accounts of everyone else.
Yeah.
You could also triangulate that into a cone.
Well, that's the point, because
Right.
no, I think that's literally the point, though, Paul, is like...
The point, cones have points also.
Yeah.
Yes. Is like this triangulation of the truth, through the minimum of at least 3 perspectives to create balance. I mean, he's talking about like engineering, right? Like he's obsessed with statics and equilibrium to literally build a cone that will be like something that won't fall apart, right? Or like will stand together.
It's almost like he was trying to build, like the cone is kind of like a Tower of Babel, right? A little bit.
Yeah.
This perfect thing reaching, not necessarily reaching to God, but like reaching to scientific purity.
Were cones stupid to make?
Were his
And his sister's happiness, right? Like, like his sister's happiness is also for him like the sort of ultimate goal for some reason, which we
But Reutemer's wrong about it.
Right.
He's fucked up about it.
He's super fucked up about it.
He doesn't know how to achieve that.
Right. Well, he has this, like you said earlier, Matt, he has this paternalistic view of like, I know what's best for her, even though she's never consulted about it. She's never like asked, hey, do you want to live in a fucking cone in the middle of the woods
for 6 years,
with
your cone.
like no kitchen and just random ass rooms that are for nothing. And she gets there and dies because it sucks. And then, so yeah. But again, he takes it to this sort of like apotheosis of scientific like presumption, where it's like, I've studied her for years. I know what she likes. I know what type of person she is, and I know what's going to make her happy. And it's this fucking cone. And of course, I think this was smart on Bernhard's part. We don't see any of that reasoning. We don't see any of that explanation of why he thinks the cone will make her happy, because of course it's absurd and it's nonsensical.
But he's already
he feels so confident in it that it's a mathematical proof that
he's inexplicably forsworn the outside perspective by already preemptively hating experts, or just which is a convenient description of people who might say, right, like this doesn't make any sense. And while there's something to be taken away from it, like on one side of like, yeah, a lot of people are naysayers and lack the imagination to do something interesting and new. There's a lot of people who know what the fuck they're saying, and like it's your part of your intelligent ability to differentiate between the two,
and to listen to the ones who do know what they're talking about.
Right, and to not have this megalomaniacal presumption that you 100% grok the entirety of, for instance, another individual like your sister, and know how to build the perfect habitat for her.
It's
like
interesting. It's interesting, though.
Yeah.
I also think that there's some commentary on kind of like the scientific, I guess I should say, worldview, where Reuthammer actually does wind up disproving all of the architects and builders and geographers who said he couldn't build the cone, because he does build the cone. But the people that he never consults, whatever, the psychologists or philosophers or whoever, about his sister, that's where he fails, right? He fails in making the connection between, I've done this perfect, scientifically perfect thing and your own happiness, right? It's that gap between science and like humanity that I think Bernhard is trying to illustrate here, right? Like, Reuthammer is correct about a lot of things. All of the builders and architects and people were wrong, but it's not enough because his sister hates it and dies there, and then he kills himself. And so there's this gap between like scientific perfection and truth and actual humanity.
Right. The how thing, that you can explain the how, but not the why. It's he never consults his sister once. He has an excuse for why he shouldn't.
Right.
Yeah, which is like an interesting point because I mean, just reading this, I think of Bernhard as being just like a dickhead. I feel like he was a dickhead. But that's a wholesome view of the world, I would say, is that like, the end of the book ends up being pretty tragic and everyone dies or whatever. But you're right. Like, science isn't the answer to everything. And I think that's what he believes.
But
that is wholesome.
I got some other stuff underlined, but it goes, but don't we always immediately see and seek meaning in everything we see and think? Everything is what it is. That's all. If we keep attaching meanings and mysteries to everything we perceive, everything we see that is, and to everything that goes on inside us, we are bound to go crazy sooner or later, I thought. Like, he's at once discrediting the idea that you need to inquire further, while like also being critical of people who do not inquire. Like, there's so many contradictions to Reuthammer by the end that like it does kind of, and this is where I think, and again, I'm annoyed because I just don't know enough, but like I feel like there's a little bit of a little secret Hegel that he's also kind of championing here, like opposites and destruction creating a new thing constantly.
The synthesis.
And that actually being like the closest you're going to get to like some kind of relationship with reality. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Gabe, once again, I'm looking to you as a
I know even
philosophy guy.
No. I know even less about Hegel than I do about Wittgenstein. But I do think that there's certainly a Reuthammer is certainly Hegelian in the sense that he's operating towards what he sort of sees as like at least the end of his own personal history, which is his sister living alone in the cone for the rest of her days. One of the things that I thought was interesting about that whole kind of situation is that we don't get any sense of what Reuthammer plans to do with himself while his sister is living in the cone. I mean, he talks a little bit about going back to Cambridge to do some more scientific work, but you almost get the sense that like he's going to be lost if and when this goal is achieved, right? Like this is what he has dedicated the last, I think it's like 6 years that it takes to conceive and build the cone. Yeah. Once the cone is built and his sister is living there safely, what's his plan? I feel like that's never fully explored psychologically or narratively.
Yeah, and he's done more than just build the cone. He's done all of these symbolic gestural things with selling Altensom and paying off his brothers who he hates.
Yes.
And his parents are both dead. And I
think that's another really interesting family dynamic we could talk about. I mean, I think The family stuff is really like in some ways the core of the book, along with the narrator, because his father, who knows that he hates his ancestral home, Altensam, purposely, according to Roy Thomer, and then this is again the question of sort of reliability and unreliability. According to Roy Thomer, his father leaves him Altensam in his will on purpose to sort of spite him because he knows he hates it and he knows he wants to destroy it and will try to sell it.
Right.
Rather than one of his brothers who might try to preserve it or live there or whatever. And so he views this as sort of like the final act of spite from his father, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, as opposed to like a vote of confidence ever, that's never even floated once.
No, absolutely not.
And then there's just this like, there's, I mean, he's already done for, it feels like. Because then with his sister, it's just all this creepy shit where he's like, I've watched her since I was a child, but he's like, and I promise it was scientific. Like I'm doing science. Like I'm just watching her and I'm making sure all her physical processes and I'm also accounting for her emotional state. I'm taking a catalog of all that and I'm making sure I've logged it so that at some point I can create an entire profile on her so that her body and soul are mine to be objectively understood, and then I can build a cone. And it's like
a cone for her.
And you're being like dismissive of the fact that some people might go like, that sounds insane.
Yeah.
And it kills her.
And there's like a surprising lack of any weird sexual nature towards his relationship with his sister, but you can't help but like fill in the blanks a little bit with it.
Yeah. True that, because it's he's never had a romantic relationship. He's never been with anybody, and like his entire worldview seems derived from, like most people, like a very Freudian concept, like derived from just his crappy family dynamic. Like he's just like the way he thinks about the world is a result of the fact that his parents hate each other. The house is divided between siblings. There's punishments meted out, and people are just vying for like control. And he's like, that's how it is for everybody on Earth, and that's basically like where he gets that notion.
Do you think that Bernhard believes that like having that sort of intellectual capacity, which I kind of believe that he thinks he had in himself, do you think that he believes it's some sort of like curse for a human to have that? And that's part of the theme of this book is to like,
I'm definitely picking up on the like idea that, this is funny because it's like, I'm picking up on the theme that just your notions, right? The fact that you can abstract yourself out by multiple degrees to the point where you're like, you're hating other people, you're embarking on a project that engages you intellectually but is premised on mistakes on a very fundamental level, like for instance about how much you understand your fucking family members, like your sister.
Your hot sister. She was hot.
She seemed hot.
Maybe she had cone. Maybe he built cone boobs for her too, like a cone.
Yeah,
bra
she had sort of like
boobs.
a Madonna sort of.
Yeah, like Return of the Jedi style cone boobs. It's off the rails too quick.
But just basically like how like, I would say essentially how it's so easy to get into your own head and to just embark on a journey from one false premise out to you're just fucking in outer space. You don't even know what's going on anymore. You're like, you've created a cosmology derived from a single data point that was already wrong to begin with, and like now your whole life is ruined. And that's the danger of abstraction and the danger of like I don't know, taking a stand even. If it's mistaken, it's destructive.
Well, and there's also this theme in the book of Reuthammer kind of like obsessively wanting to break away from his what he sees as like his parents' pre-established world for him of aristocracy and, you know, sort of pomp and circumstance and like here's what you're supposed to do, and Reuthammer is kind of obsessed with this idea of like breaking that and trying to get out of that world. And he, you know, he talks about how, I mean, there's a lot of, you know, what I would classify as basically anti-natalist talk in here about the sort of the crime of bringing other human beings into existence and how terribly parents always treat their children. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have a passage about it, but, I'll just read it, I guess, because I think it's another kind of like relatively important theme from the book. That's why I no longer go to my parents' grave either, because to go on living with such a lie afterward could have only been the most destructive effect on everything else. But of course, a man can never really liberate himself from anything. He leaves the prison into which he was propagated and born only at the instant of his death. We enter a world which precedes us but is not prepared for us, and we have to cope with this world. If we can't cope with this world, we're done for. But if we survive, for whatever constitutional reason, then we must take care to turn this world, which was a given world but not made for us or ready for us, a world which is all set in any case, because it was made by our predecessors to attack us and ruin us and finally destroy us, nothing else. We must turn it into a world to suit our own ideas, acting first behind the scenes inconspicuously, but then with all our might and quite openly, so that we can say after a while that we're living in our own world, not in some previous world, one that is always bound to be of no concern to us and intent upon ruining and destroying us. Beginning with our earliest flickers of intelligence, we have to explore intently our chances of making this world that's been put on us like a worn, shabby suit of used clothes, much too tight or much too large, but in any case, a shabby and torn and ragged and stinking outfit handed to us, as it were, off the world's rack. We must explore the whole surface of our world and its subsurface to keep probing it deeper and deeper so as to discover our chances of making this world, which is not our world, our own after all. Our entire existence is nothing but concentrating on such chances and on how, in what way, we are to change this world which is not ours, ultimately to change it. So Reuthammer.
And that's such a counter to the like return to tradition thing.
True. Yeah, that's fair.
Like, you know, the idea that continuity is a straitjacket that you're born into without your consent.
Yep. And I think it goes more to your last point, Matt, about even if this idea is wrong, as long as it's not that fucking idea, I'm going to the mat with it.
Right. Yeah, it's more like these commitments to reactions to prior states of being or ideas, you know?
Yes.
Which is why I think it's more kind of it feels like if it's Wittgenstein, it feels like a critical engagement with it. And it's and I don't think Reuthammer is supposed to come across as a like a guy you're supposed to be like, wow, what a honorable, principled, like intellectual that I want to be. It's more like, fuck, this guy's from a shitty family and he's ruined his sister's life and his whole life and he killed himself. Like, I feel like it's pretty straightforward almost. Like, you don't go this path in the very least.
Yeah. What do you think, Paul? What do you think about that? Is the book glorifying or not glorifying Reuthammer?
I think that as it presents itself, it's not glorifying Reuthammer, but it's hard to take Bernhard's own point of like a real point of view out of the picture, especially knowing that he loved Wittgenstein so much. So it's I don't know. I can't totally answer it. But I mean, just reading it as a text, yeah, I mean, it seemed to me that he didn't really like Reuthammer as a character, or think that he was like a strong person or a good person.
I do think the book is generally pretty dark though and misanthropic, even if it isn't endorsing Reuthamer's specific type of misanthropy. It's overall like
there's not a lot of hope for other people or anybody at all.
I just have one short paragraph that I want to read. It's not a paragraph because there are no paragraphs in this book. It's but it's like 6 lines.
Okay.
This is on 259, Matt.
Okay.
This is from Reuthamer's papers. When we wake up, we feel ashamed. Waking up is always the frightening minimum of existence. So Reuthamer, April 9th. The situation is always the same in rational terms. Wake up, wash, get dressed, work, see people, don't despair, try not to despair. April 11th. We accept, April 11th. We answer the letters we receive, no matter whom or where they come from, not because a trap has been set for us in all of these letters, April 13th. If I had not become involved with the art of building, it would have been something else equally terrible. And I think there's a sort of fatalism, right, about the world that we're born into. So the last thing I read was all about trying to change the world and whatever. But also towards the end, and that what I just read is from the last 10 pages or so. I think Reuthamer sort of comes to this fatalistic view of his own fate, but also the fate of everybody, basically.
But then, on 265, I'd realized that everything I described in my manuscript was not so. That everything is always different from the way it's been described. The actual is always different from the description. Altensom and everything connected with Altensom, it's different. Dover, Brussels, Cologne, I had to recognize that everything in my manuscript was all wrong. The characters are different. The character is another. So Reuthamer. My brothers came forward to meet me in Stockett. I had the evidence that everything I described was all wrong. Even before Dover, I'd started to make corrections to the manuscript, and little by little I'd corrected everything, and finally realized that nothing in it expresses the reality as it actually is. The description runs counter to the actuality. But I drew the logical consequences from this insight, so Reuthamer. I did not hesitate to correct everything all over again in the process of correcting everything all over again, so Reuthamer. I destroyed everything.
True. Yeah, that's a good point.
Just a Hail Mary denial of everything preceding it.
Right. Well, and of course, and this is one thing that I didn't love about the book because I kind of got it before it was made super explicit. Suicide is the correction, right?
Yeah.
Like the correction in the title is suicide, basically. And that's sort of Reuthamer's ultimate view, is that the only way to truly correct for everything that we've gotten wrong, that we've done wrong, etc., is suicide. That's the ultimate correction. And there was a passage towards the end that made that a little cringily explicit for my taste, if I'm being honest, because I kind of got it, and then it's just basically kind of laid out. But I think that kind of fits with that passage that you just read, Matt.
Yeah, because he talks about his. Do you? He's talking about his family members all offing themselves.
He's got uncles and
cousins
and then tons of people. I did think the passage about his cousin who jumped off the cliff into the rock cleft was really touching, where he goes up and tries to see where his cousin killed himself.
Yeah.
I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, but still.
Austrian beauty.
Austere Austrian beauty. So you do get the sense that like there's a precedent now for his behavior too, right?
Yeah.
Like he has people who've paved the way for his gesture a bit.
You know what this book, to name drop a couple other books that we've read in the show, you know what this book reminded me of a lot? It reminded me of a few books, actually. It reminded me of, stylistically, Krasner Horkhai, obviously.
Fuck yeah, dude, yes.
The Wolf The Last Wolf and Herman, which we did not record an episode on. Lost episode.
I don't remember reading that book at all.
It was the two very, very short novellas.
It's like the gamekeeper who like
The
hides
Last
away.
Wolf and Herman.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Kind of. A little bit.
It's stylistically very similar, if thematically different. But it reminded me thematically, and maybe more importantly, of two other books. It reminded me of Sleep Has His House.
I was going to say
Anna Kavan's
Sleep Has His House
book, which is a sort of more first-person narration of someone reckoning with a weird-ass mom and trying to figure out like what to do. And stylistically, not entirely unrelated. And it also reminded me of The Real Life of Sebastian Knight, the Nabokov novel, where you have a narrator trying to piece together the quote-unquote truth
Right.
about a sort of idealized third figure. And I think that all of that is kind of coming together in this novel, where you have someone who's left Reutheimer's literary and intellectual legacy trying to piece it together, a la The Real Life of Sebastian Knight. And then when you actually start to dive into that legacy, it's mainly like weird. In the Kavan novel, it's not Freudian technically or per se, because it's a daughter and her mother, not a son and his mother. But diving into that sort of Freudian effect that your parents and specifically your mother have on the rest of your sort of intellectual and psychic development.
Kavan reacting to psychoanalysis.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like a major issue with Freud in general, though, is that like he just didn't write or talk about the daughter in the scenario.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
But yeah, at this point, you can obviously project parental misguidance on a male or a female, or a they or them.
Absolutely.
But the dad gets a fucking pass, dude.
The dad
Like,
gets a pass.
The mom is like so explicitly and almost uncomfortably reviled. And then it makes the like fact that the dad is like, and dad was like, he was just kind of quiet.
He was just quiet. He took me hunting.
Yeah,
whatever.
like my mom, she wore disgusting robes and she was dumb idiot and she was like, her makeup was all smeared all over her ugly fucking butcher's daughter face. My dad was like, he was just kind of withdrawn. Like he was just kind of aloof. But my fucking mom,
Right.
she didn't even bathe for days. It was like so pointed. It was like very strange.
Do you guys,
You know?
did you have a face in mind when you were reading this book of who Rauheimer looked like?
Ooh, that's a good question. How did I picture Reutheimer?
I mean, I was just
I
seeing
have one.
I was seeing like a mixture of like Wittgenstein and like Rupert Sheldrake. Like just like a very like
Who is this person that you've been so into lately, Matt? You shared one of his videos on Twitter. You want to read one of his books on Goodreads. Who is this person?
Whoa, chill, you're blowing up my fucking spot, bro.
They know
I'm
your
just-
name. I don't know.
I'm
Just
just
to answer
curious.
real quick, my question, I was picturing Mark Zuckerberg.
Ooh.
Maybe mixed with Elon Musk, but like both of their faces. It's like face off. Both their faces cut in
I
half.
actually pictured Joaquin Phoenix's Joker more than anything else.
See, I was
the
thinking
full
about
makeup?
Joaquin Phoenix from Gladiator.
Okay, yeah, that works
know?
too.
That's my favorite performance by Joaquin. That's a great performance.
One of his better ones, yeah, for sure.
Why won't Daddy love me?
Yeah,
Kills
basically.
his dad. I love that.
He poisons him and he's like, I didn't get the advantage.
So good.
Or for mine, maybe it's Tyrion Lannister from Game of Thrones, who also kills his dad.
Nice. Although in the books, right, he's supposed to be like way more scarred and like weird looking, right?
He does get
like,
scarred.
no nose.
He's got a scar in the show.
He does,
But in the book,
it's like
his
cinematic
nose
and not
gets
disgusting.
cut off.
Yes.
Yeah.
true.
He has like
correct.
just holes like a skull.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
looks like
skull
Red Skull
nose.
by the end.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Small.
I don't know
small
much
skull.
about Sheldrake. He's a British biologist who has some like admixture of like what I like is he's rubbed elbows with like a lot of weird figures in like the 60s like England.
I watched the interview you shared on Twitter.
He had a lot of nice jabs against Julian Huxley, Aldous' dad, and that guy's a monster. And he has a theory that I just wanted to know about. It's called morphic resonance, which is supposed to be a somewhat scientific explanation, I think, of like notions of telepathy and things like that, and how like the living world is conscious in ways that are like broader, like. Yeah, it just seemed kind of interesting to me.
Sounds like a good
Okay,
sci-fi-
now you guys
sci-fi
are
movie.
deep into the Spinecrackers lore.
Yeah.
You've come to the deep lore section of the Spinecrackers podcast. And if you're still listening, I know scientifically, thanks to YouTube and podcast analytics, there's only about 3% of you left.
The elect.
Is that true?
Yes. By this point, it's about 5 to 3%
Wow.
of people listening.
People don't listen to the fucking scores?
We should probably highlight the Harry Potter thing and be like, if you listen at the end, you get Harry Potter talk.
We should do that because that's a sad.
But
That's a
anyway,
sad
I don't know about this Sheldrake guy, but telepathy and all that shit is 100% real. And if you're interested in it, I don't know about Sheldrake, but the guy that I know is a guy named Dean Radin,
Okay.
who did a PhD at like Princeton in psychology and science shit, and he did a bunch of postdoc work at Harvard. And there are some weird ass experiments out there that show some fucking crazy shit.
Look, we don't know nothing.
I do. Telepathy is real.
No. I don't mean by that. I didn't mean to say I deny. I'm saying the world is mysterious still,
Yeah.
and therefore telepathy is something that I absolutely buy into, as well as ghosts.
I buy into
aliens are
ghosts.
statistically real.
Mm-hmm.
These things keep it spicy, and you don't even have to like be. I fucking love science rigorously against them because they certainly there's arguments that they're around.
Yeah.
I mean, statistically, there's probably a cone in like northern Canada too that
Yes.
we don't know about.
In the what would be the equivalent of the forest? The Tim Horton forest.
The maple syrup forest.
You can buy all dressed potato chips.
There's a cone. There's a cone of hash browns in the Tim Horton forest in Saskatchewan.
Oh, I was thinking there was this just a random aside too is in like there was this so in 1917, right, when like the Bolsheviks took power, the Fifth International or whatever, the Comintern, there was these architects called the constructivists, I believe, who were like doing sort of like state sanctioned architecture theory, and one of them was Vladimir Tatlin, and he wanted to make this this it was called the Tatlin Tower. It was never made, but it was like supposed to be this distillation, like it was going to house the offices for the new government and all this kind of stuff, and it was like 2 helix staircases going up with like rooms suspended in decreasing size but increasing like hierarchical importance along the helix, and it was going to be this big somewhat conical tower. In like 1920 they were like trying to get it going, but it didn't happen.
Another thing you wonder if Bernhard knew about or read about.
Yeah, definitely like architecture definitely like he was into architecture, especially like it feels like the out there hyper theoretical parts of architecture, about phenomenological experience within it, and like activating human potential, and like
Is
putting
there
those
anything
fucking,
more pretentious than high art architecture?
not in my there's certainly, but it's up there. I've talked to some Pratt students about it, and it's sometimes it's pretty rough.
Yeah.
What they think
I mean,
a
I went
wall
to-
is
I
going
went-
to do to a human brain.
I went to art school and had I had a roommate that was like a design student, and I always hated getting in conversations about like how design can affect the world, and so that's
Yeah.
tainted my view of architecture, like high art architecture, and being a pretentious person in general.
All right, before we go to our final segments, I just want to read one more passage, if that's okay. I just feel like it's important to read the writing from this book, which we've talked about a little bit, but I just want people to try to get a sense of it. And this is, I mentioned briefly that I wished that sort of like final theme, the final reference to the title wasn't made as explicit as it was. And I want to read that passage where it happens, because it's well written, but it bugged me. Like, I'm like, it almost performatively made me feel like Bernhard was doing the thing that I've been accusing him of, which is that thinking everybody is stupid, that we wouldn't get the point that suicide is the correction, which
Sure.
is obvious in the text, but he needs to make it this much more obvious. We don't ask those we love, just as we don't ask those we hate. So Reuthamer. Actually, I'm shocked by everything I've just written. What if it was all quite different, I wonder? But I will not correct now what I've written. I'll correct it all when the time for such correction has come, and then I'll correct the corrections and correct again the resulting corrections, and so forth. So Reuthamer. We're constantly correcting and correcting ourselves most rigorously because we recognize at every moment that we did it all wrong. Wrote it, thought it, made it all wrong, acted all wrong. How we acted all wrong, that everything to this point in time is a falsification. So we correct this falsification, and then we again correct the correction of this falsification, and we correct...
I read this passage.
You read the whole book, didn't you?
No, I mean, I read this passage
He
on
read
the
it.
podcast
Oh,
already.
you already did? Shit. Was I in the bathroom?
No.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
Anyway.
You can keep going, though,
No,
because
I
I
think
don't
I
know
was
if
in
you're
the
going to read
bathroom.
more. Maybe you were.
Yeah, maybe you're going further.
It was really early on. It was like one of the first ones I read.
Anyway. I guess I won't finish then. But
No, go ahead and finish. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have cut you off. I should
no,
have
no, you should have, because that's stupid. But just at the end, where he talks about we didn't really know all these people, characters, because their self-correction took us by surprise. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been surprised by their ultimate existential correction, their suicide. That just felt a little over the top to me. Like, we get it. The correction is the suicide.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The mistake of your birth, I guess, like the mistake of your birth and the fact that your birth plants you into a scenario that you oftentimes cannot fully correct for, and therefore you just perpetuate problems.
It's like the
Yeah.
Rust Cole nihilism of just, you should
Yeah,
everyone
it's
should
Rust
just
Cole.
walk off
Yeah, it's
into
very
the
Rust Cole.
distance and just die in the desert or whatever.
Yeah, humanity was a mistake. Yeah.
Yeah. Our consciousness was a mistake, right? Because animals don't have yeah.
Right.
Right.
And it's like,
Rust correction.
Rust correction. Of course, at the very end of True Detective, spoilers, he becomes like a kind of a Christian.
Wholesome boy.
yeah, he does. That is important.
To me, it looks like there was always darkness before the light. I forget what he says. Fuck.
So cringe.
The last line, though, is very cringe, even though I love that. I've watched it like last week for like the 5th time. I love that show.
Right.
It's
like
cringe. The end is
stars,
cringe.
something about the stars.
Yeah.
Season
being-
2 is not that bad, dude.
It's pretty
It
good,
bad.
actually.
I'll watch it again.
It's pretty good. It's darker. I would
would
say,
argue
than the
that
first
it's
season.
even darker
Yeah,
thematically.
yeah.
They all die, basically.
Pretty much.
Yep.
I'm a huge Colin Farrell fan, so I was just disappointed after the epic season 1. Watching
Correction,
season 2, I was
Farrell.
like, fuck. What did I say?
No, you said
Colin, you said
anything that
Colin.
starts with CO is correction.
Oh.
Yeah.
That thing now.
The corrections, John Franzen.
I thought I said like Colin Fraser by accident or something, and you were like correction.
Speaking of Franzen, I mean, we don't have to get into this. We've gone long, but I guess not for us. It's 2 hours exactly. But
Okay.
Speaking of Franzen, I just wanted to bring up like what you guys felt about, or ask you what you felt about the difficulty of this book, because we talked about in our earlier episode about where we just sort of general book talk, the notion of difficult books, which is sort of hot perpetually
Always,
in
yeah.
the sort of Instagram booktube community, like people just uploading videos about quote unquote like the most difficult books, the Gaddis and the McElroys and the Joyce and the this and the that, and just slapping their fucking cocks on the table for having read those books. It's interesting to me that Bernhard isn't in those conversations, having read this book, which was my first Bernhard. It's not long, like some of those books are, 800. This book is 300 pages.
I think that's important, though.
But I've read some, not some of the big ones, no, not McElroy and not Infinite Jest and whatever, but I've read some of those long, difficult books. And I can say that this was up there for me in terms of the toll that it took on me subjectively. And I would even go back to what you brought up earlier, Matt, Bay's Cathedral, which is like 50 pages shorter than this. That book's like 250 pages. And that book took more out of me than any of those other books, arguably, to get through. And of course, Mackie has an even larger collection. I guess I just wonder, like, why someone like Bernhard isn't in that conversation. Is it only because it's shorter? Is it because he doesn't use words that you don't have to take time out to look up in a dictionary?
100%.
Like, it feels like such a stupid standard to me. I'm sorry, not to get into it.
It's just length and vocab, dude. I really think those are the double that really just make the difference. It's not 1,000, it's not over 500 pages long, and the vocab isn't crazy,
Yeah.
I really think those are the two things that most people assign as like, yeah, dude, I've been through it. Like, this was a smart person's book.
I was in the war, man.
Yeah. Dude, I had to go to the dictionary like a bunch of times, and like, like that's what defines most 90% probably of like cultural commentary on hard books.
Are you specifically asking about Bernhard then, and why he isn't in the picture?
Yeah, just because like I felt like this book was exhausting to me to read, and I think that that's part of Bernhard's intention.
It's like a challenge to you. It's like an active one too. It's like he is making it not fun, and I think he knows that on some level, He's like, yeah, I'm gonna say it over and over. You little book reading sub. You like that?
You like books? Read this one.
Yeah.
Well, someone was also describing like the benevolent dictator kind of experience where every new piece of information feels weightier because of the repetition. She was like this whatever reviewer was like, it's like hearing somebody go like, I opened the door is opened, I turned the knob and opened the door, I opened the old door opened, I opened the old door,
Right.
I opened the old red door. You know what I mean? And you're just
I
like,
opened the old
holy
red
shit.
door, which opened.
Yeah, and you're just like, so you hear that it's red, after all those repetitions, and you go like, oh shit, it has a little more weight to it, the new data, because you've heard the same shit too much.
And wow, it's so fascinating that the door is red. Wow. I mean, that's like, I think that's one of my major, I mean, we're going to get into it in the final reviews, but I was trying to look for a clip of this show I just watched called One Punch Man. I know both of you probably don't care about this, but I need to say
I love One Punch Man, dude. I love it.
Oh my God, you watched it?
Yeah.
It's so awesome.
Yeah.
Dude, I got to read it.
Very
It's
good.
so funny. But do you remember the scene where Genos is explaining to One Punch Man like why he wants to be his disciple?
Yes.
And he's just it's like 4 minutes of him just being like, I want to be your master. You're so amazing at punching. I want to be it. And he just like keeps rambling on and on about like why he needs to be a better fighter and why he like isn't strong enough. And it's so funny because at One Punch Man, the animation's hilarious, and he's just staring at him, just like fucking stop talking, and he finally screams like, just say what you need to say or whatever, just like say it. And I was thinking of that scene the whole time reading this book. It's just like, why are you being so difficult when you can clearly say what you're trying to say? Yeah.
Imagine if One Punch Man was trying to obliquely engage with Wittgenstein, though, and that's where I feel like that's why it's the way it is to my mind. It's just like a guy who's like, well, it's not that easy. You can't say nothing unless you demonstrate that you can. And it's just like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, so, okay, before we get to everyone's favorite segment, let's do a little Easter egg for the real spine crack heads out there. Where would this book rank for you all in terms of the most difficult, however you interpret that term, books we've read for the show?
I'll go first because I have to pee. Second, behind Base Cathedral. Easy answer.
Shoot, man. I don't even know how many books we've read total.
This is going to be episode 37, I think. 36.
Yeah. Fuck.
I'll just put you on the spot more. That this is also an easy number 2 for me. I think Base Cathedral gave me a lot more trouble. But then this is number 2.
Yeah. It's just we can hear Paul so clearly. Yeah, I just want to let that sit.
Just forgot to mute himself. This is the real Easter egg for the spine crack heads. You're hearing Paul take a tinkle.
You can hear his flow. Yeah, Base Cathedral is up there, but again, like you were trying to, I feel like insinuate, like difficulty is not locked down to any certain parameter. Like Base Cathedral, it felt like it felt more. It was just because it was layered. Like it felt like there were so many valences happening at once all the time, and you were constantly having to like account for all of them and like at least assume they were there, and therefore like try and think about what might be being said.
And to throw a bone to all the dictionary weirdos out there, if you think there's a lot of books or a lot of words in Infinite Jest that you don't know, read Base Cathedral. There's so much like obscure musical terminology in that book that I had to look up.
There's a lot of like fake words too, like words that don't even make sense where they are.
Yeah.
And like Infinite Jest is like there's a giant chunk of just like, oh my God, I just read Neil Postman or something. You know what I mean? There's like there's like already a But for this one, yeah, the fuck, man. Yeah, maybe number 2 just because there's also this, it feels like presumption or precondition of maybe you needed to have engaged with philosophers, which is not something that's happened at least as overtly as this in most of the other things we've read.
Right,
The other one
that's not an episode. That's not an episode. We got.
Wait, what? Which one?
Eamesville.
Oh no, it's not an episode. It's not real. The other one I would throw in there is the Ah Chang book, The King of Trees, because I feel like that one.
That's just
It wasn't philosophers, but you had to know a fuck ton about Maoism and the Cultural Revolution for that book to make any kind of sense.
That was more historical context being outside.
But again, like, why is that never thrown into the discussion of difficulty? Maybe I'm on my fucking hobby horse now, but
no, you're right. I mean, difficulty is in and of itself a kind of reductionist thing, and I think like I'm gonna stand by my initial definition of it for most people, even avid readers. It's just length and vocabulary.
Yeah.
I really think that's what it boils down to for a giant chunk of it.
Wait, well, so where does this rank?
This will probably be number. I'll put it at number 3.
Behind which two?
Base Cathedral and King of Trees.
Oh, okay, sweet.
I do want to throw the Museum of Unconditional Surrender in there too. That was a difficult.
That book was tough too, for similar reasons to King of Trees, historical, political reasons.
Mm-hmm. But also just like the rhythmic, deposition, or I don't know the word, but like the rhythm that she wrote in was very hard to break into. But once you got it, it was enjoyable.
This was the only one
and
that
a lot
felt,
of different like points of view in that book too. But
yeah, that one jumped around. That one was like, it felt like so many things. And then this one was thematically, maniacally focused. And it was like the repetition that would have been the off-putting aspect of it. And that was what made it difficult, right, too. It was like, you're just like, okay, you know, okay.
It was like listening to Elon Musk's brain if he was evil. And love cones and not cars.
Yeah, he is evil.
Yeah, he is evil. You're a wizard, Harry.
Not too many people
have made it this far.
Yeah, but here we are. We just did read another book. It's time to classify the characters in the book into Harry Potter houses.
That's right.
Yay.
Yes.
So, whomst do we begin with?
The sister. Does she get a name?
No.
Yeah, okay. The sister is unnamed, right? Okay. I feel like there's more than we think there are.
Yeah.
But it's still
more
few.
Characters or
more characters, yeah.
But you also get it's such a threadbare account
because it's all through Roy Thomas.
Yeah, it's like really 2, but then
I feel like I can only classify 2.
I think we could. Okay, fine. The sister can be. I think we can do 3. I think we get enough of Holler. I think we can do Roy Thomas, the narrator, and Holler.
Well, I have my ideas about. I mean, I think for me it's pretty straightforward, and it does cleave to the stereotype. But I think Holler and the narrator are puffs, basically.
Yeah.
I think Holler is a Gryffindor. Holler basically inspired the building of the cone in the first place because he was such a Giga Chad that he was like, I'm going to build my fucking house on the cliffs of this raging river for no reason except that I want to. And everyone says that I can't, and I'm going to just fucking do it. And then Roy Thomas basically is like, I'm copying you, except I'm going to do a cone in the woods.
Yeah. You know what? You're right. Hiller is definitely Gryffindor because he does not, he precipitated all of it.
Maybe Holler's a Ravenclaw. I know,
maybe a Ravenclaw.
That was a little bit reductive because I was just saying Hollendor's a Gryffindor because I think, not Hollendor, wow, Holler, because he's a Chad.
Yeah. Not all Chads are Gryffindors.
Yes.
No, he's like because like he's brave, but it's not demonstrative. Like he's not performing for anybody. He's not, it's quiet.
But he's also
It's
Puff.
it's kind of performing though.
But he's also arguably Puff because he never leaves the land of his birth. He's very loyal to like his native space, and he stays there and builds a home there even when his friends leave.
I'm sticking with Gryffindor for Holler.
I'll say Gryffindor also.
Yeah, me too. I think.
He just forges
Hufflepuff
ahead.
wouldn't do it.
He didn't need all of the trappings that Reutemer has. Reutemer is Ravenclaw, but like the bad kind, like the pointy-headed, just only cogitating, like to the destruction of everything else. Like he's having a tough time.
Yeah, I think Reutemer's bad Ravenclaw is pretty easy.
Yeah,
clap.
definitely. Yeah. And the narrator definitely Hufflepuff.
Narrator's easy clap Puff too.
He's
yeah,
Puff. Narrator's Puff, dude.
There's no
yeah.
question.
You can't just obsess over your high school friends' manuscripts and like start talking like them in your own writing without being he just like becomes him almost. I actually read one review that thought that like the narrator was some sort of doppelganger like figure and he might not even possibly be a real person.
There is some weird towards the end of the book playing around with pronouns between Reutemer and the narrator, where it's he and I and we and they. There is some weird stuff that goes on in the last 30 or 40 pages of the book, where it almost feels like Reutemer starts to take over the narrator's voice in reciting his own or reviewing his own papers.
But you did read that passage. I think Gabe or Paul, I think it was Paul, right? You like about being infected by an idea and
right,
like having someone eventually, if you're like too obsessed with somebody's own way of thinking, they own you. You are possessed by them spiritually. It's just ideology kind of, a little bit. So that's what I thought that was about, was like this dude who is so he again, it's like this whole critical triangulation of some kind of truth, and the narrator represents like the guy who is a sympathetic ear and wants to like account for his friend, but he's the type of person that will just like, the strongest personality that he knows will be the thing that just sinks through him. Like he will no longer be himself.
right.
And so that you get that confusion. And that's Hufflepuff.
That's Hufflepuff.
Yeah, that's
right.
Hufflepuff.
For sure. All right.
All right, scores.
Dibs not
Easy.
first. Oh, I beat you.
No, you didn't.
What the hell?
Matt, you're...
No, Gabe,
I
you have
won,
to go
right?
first.
Okay,
yeah.
fine.
I totally won.
Yeah. I think
I think your internets are on delays, so it's fine, just for the record.
No, I totally...
my ping is good.
Ping.
XBC.
XBC.
I had XBC. I went back and forth on this book a lot. I went back and forth a lot about kind of how much both about what I thought Bernhard's actual views were and how they were expressed in the book, and how much I should let that affect my view of the book, right? So there was like 4 axes on which I was like swinging. Is this Bernhard's actual views? Is it not? Does it matter? Does it not matter? I enjoyed reading it. I think probably more than Paul did. Almost certainly more. I want to read more Bernhard. It's like a 4.07 for me, I think.
Whoa. Holy.
Better than I thought you were going to say.
Again, I mean, I came down on a few passages and ideas that stuck with me. So,
Holy balls. above the 4.0 marker. That's pretty crazy. I didn't see that coming. I mean, I think you guys
Barely,
probably
okay?
Yes, I don't know. Still, I don't know. I mean, you guys can probably guess because I'm so. I take so many books at like face value and how they're written that I can't like separate that from my rating or reading of a book. And I mean, the one positive aspect I will say is that like I don't like style over substance, but there was enough substance in this book that even though the style of writing was so obnoxious and unreadable to me and off-putting, and it's not a book you can pick up and just like enjoy, obviously. But there's enough there underneath that it wasn't masking the themes of the book. Like I think that some difficult written books can actually be like simple when you take away like, oh, this is like crazy vocabulary. But underneath all of that, it can be really simple and boring and like, oh, that's fucking obvious and stupid. This book still had unanswered questions and interesting themes. So it's not a terrible score I'm going to give it. I think I'm going to give it a solid 3.
Yes. Nice.
Clean.
All right. Clean. I like a clean score. Yeah, like I said, I was like, definitely had a love-hate thing going. I was like, I was seeing the repetition and the sort of relentless nature of the prose, and I was like, come on. And then there were these moments where I'd get locked in. It did really depend on mood and whatever the fuck, but like, like Gabe was saying earlier on, I could go past my threshold because of just reading it within like the time frame that we had to finish it, and that would be unpleasant. But there, in the smaller doses of about 20 or 30 pages, where I was like fucking locked in, and I liked that very much. Yeah, the kind of takeaway though, I liked the approach of triangulating it between characters and how there's a lot of like I think there's a lot of presumed theory and familiarity with philosophy and all this shit that I didn't really have, but I kind of like trying to engage with it. Still pretty grim, which I don't know if I necessarily buy the kind of maybe conclusion you're gonna draw from something like this. So 3.7.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one thing I forgot to say is that like I don't like the engagement with like if you need to know philosophy or prior text to like get into the mindset of an author, I don't like that, and maybe that's just me. But it adds like a layer of not like knowledge that the reader needs to have in order to engage with it fully, that I'm just like, the simpleton in me is just like, write a fucking book, right?
Well, I don't think
and
it's-
that I know,
But that's okay, dude. That's Cliff though. That's every book should stand alone. There's no context. I don't know. I don't agree.
I also
with that.
think I also think it's doing that. What you're saying, it's just also referencing the like inspirations for the concepts engaged. I don't think it's not trying to, on its own terms, get you to like think about those things more forwardly without having to do all that shit. I think it's just like also saying like who the author's thinking about when writing,
Yeah, and I guess in this book did he ever clearly say like Wittgenstein in the book? Was it even referenced? He was?
yeah. I think Matt read a passage where.
Okay.
It's not like Reutemer is Wittgenstein, but it's like Wittgenstein's name is dropped once.
Once or twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, okay, but I think in general.
And
that's an
Bernhard wrote a
issue
whole
I
book
have.
about Wittgenstein later.
Okay. Yeah.
I was also trying to account for a little bit. Whatever. I don't have to justify my score. Fuck you.
That's the attitude. Yes.
I was trying.
so
I think this was unique when it was published, in terms of style. Even considering people like Joyce and Woolf and whatever, just opening a page and seeing no fucking paragraph breaks and nothing. I do think that was unique, even when the book was published, and so.
Bernhard's famous. He's never really been out of print.
Yeah.
He did make an impact. He is some sort of unique, literary figure. So
Yo.
there's a reason for that.
I'm gonna go watch Coneheads and watch it in a different way.
Ooh, I like that.
That's a good fucking movie.
Good movie, dude. All right, well, thanks for listening.
This has been Correction by Thomas Bernhard, and we are the Spine Crackers.
Go follow us. Instagram, Twitter,
Facebook,
Patreon. If you're a spine head.
Yeah, if you're a true blue spine head.
Spinehead.
Join us next week for a different book.
Yeah.
What is the book next week?
Next week
We can say it.
I actually, yeah, we haven't. I'm going to be interested to hear what you guys think about it because I think it has some obscure, kind of weird connections to this book. It's called All Blood is Black by David Diop. It's the winner of the 2021 International Booker Prize.
Booker.
Ooh.
Yes.
I love awards and yes.
Yeah. We'll talk
People
about it.
saying
But
it was good.
It'll be by far the newest book we've read for this podcast.
Oh, dude, is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it still bleeding?
Yeah, it was published in French in 2018 and in English in 2020, I think.
Is it
shit.
Is it racial? The black, all blood is black? Is that a racial thing or?
You'll have to tune in next week to find out.
Guys, these are questions. You'll get answers.
Blood is red.
Dude.
It's blue inside your body.
Yeah, it's only when it's oxidized.
That's true.
Nerd. Yeah. Gotcha.
Nerd. You're a nerd.
You're
You're a
dude.
fucking nerd.
Yay.
And if you made it to the end, you're a nerd.
And if you made it to the end,
Yeah,
you're
you are
a
a nerd.
loser nerd. What are you still
Yeah.
doing listening? We stopped talking about the book like 3 minutes ago. Bye.
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 We love you.